Okay. So as Steve said, we've recently reached this amazing achievement of 4 million species records. So I wanted to just take you through sort of how we got there, and also how we can support you to reach the next million. So as Steve mentioned, I'm the biological recording coordinator. I started in November, so this is my first conference as a staff member. So I'm looking forward to chatting to you all. And my role is to liaise with our recorders and to find out how we can support you in your monitoring. So do at any point just get in touch, and if you've got any ideas about how we can help, do just let me know. So as I say, recently, I think it was earlier this calendar year, we reached 4 million species records, which is a fantastic achievement, and we're really pleased with this. But of course, it wouldn't be possible without our brilliant recording community and our volunteers. So a huge thanks to all of you that submit records to us. So just to sort of an overview of how we got to where we are. This is a breakdown of the number of records we get each year. Now you'll see there's quite a big peak in 2010 there. That was when we actually merged two databases. So we sort of ended up with 600,000 records in that year. So that explains that peak. And then you can see we sort of we go along quite nicely. And then 2018, there's a real kind of step change in the number of records that we're entering into our database each year. And that's due in part to sort of automation processes making it quicker to enter records, but also down to our brilliant team of data management volunteers who help us verify and validate the records, make sure they're in the right place and that sort of thing, and format them for the database. So they do a fantastic job, and we're really grateful to those volunteers. And again, if that's something that interests you, do drop me an email or the TVERC inbox, which you should have details of, and we can talk about volunteering. So to get back to the records, you'll see that these are really kind of increasing each year. And in fact, in 2021, we entered over 600,000 records. So that's great. And you'll see that actually this year, we've made a great start again. So we're really pleased with that. And then this is the records by when they were actually observed. So understandably, there's a bit of a lag between data, between species being seen and then the actual record coming into our database. So this is when the species were actually seen, and I've just put here the last 50 years of records. But we actually go back as far as our first record is from 1790. And in fact, 1794, there are over 700 records, which is by far and away the peak sort of for any year pre-1950. And that's those records are from Flora oxoniensis from John Sibthorpe. So that looks like a great tome of botanical information. So we've received a lot of records from there. But you'll see again, these records are increasing, observations are increasing, peaked in 2018, and then it looks like it's dipped obviously before we get to lockdown, which obviously our observations decreased. But it does look like there might be a dip, but hopefully it's quite early to tell. So hopefully that's not indicative of anything. So next, I just wanted to talk about our sort of what makes up our records. What are the most recorded species groups? What are the most popular groups that all of you record? So these are the top 10, and you'll see by far and away the most are birds. So that's 1.2 million records. So if you think, we've got 4 million records, over 4 million records in our database, and 1.2 million of them are birds. So that's quite staggering. And then we've got higher plants at 1 million, butterflies and moths at about 500,000 each. And then the next one at number 5 is beetles, and that's down at 100,000. So that's quite a drop there. And then you've got the other groups there. Then at the other end, which I haven't shown here, we've got things like rotifers, so sort of microscopic aquatic organisms, Collembola, soil-dwelling springtails, and slime moles, which I was looking up the other day and came across the rather wonderfully named dogsick and scrambled egg. So those sound like good ones to look out for. So if you've got an interest in those, do record those and submit those to us. And then finally, now do bear with me with this graph. I do realise it looks a bit of a mess, but I just wanted to see how the species groups have changed over time. You know, has a particular group become more popular? Do we get more records of one, and equally has another group declined in its records? And obviously that's not necessarily to do with the abundance of that particular group. It's more to do with what people are recording, the popularity or the ease of identification, or perhaps what schemes are in place, what recording schemes are in place. So you'll see as a proportion, we're actually getting more and more bird records. So to give you a sort of indication, 2013, that's nearly 60% of all our records that we received for that year were birds. And that number there is about 101,000 records. So that's just to sort of put it in perspective. So birds are increasing. Plants, they seem to be coming down, but again, that's probably because, again, going back through the years, you know, historically we've had a lot of plant records. And then I wanted to draw your attention here to this sort of lighter green line. Oh, sorry, this lighter green line are butterflies, and then we've got moths too down here, the light blue, and they look like there might be a sort of uptick during lockdown, certainly. And then at the other end of the top 10 species, we've got mollusks and beetles. It seems like they're declining in the number of records that we're getting, which is interesting. So if you're particularly keen on snails, do go out and record those. Beetles is surprising because we've got the ladybird recording scheme, and the Coleopterous Society has just started up. So hopefully we'll get some more recording there. But I do know that people have mentioned that they'd like some invertebrate training. So perhaps that's something we can organise and liaise with other organisations to provide some sort of invertebrate identification. And then I sort of pointed out the uptick that we had in butterflies and moths in 2020, and this is quite consistent with sort of the national pattern over lockdown. So this is taken from the Natural History Museum website, and it's called Nature Liberated by Lockdown, and it's all about sort of impacts of lockdown on the environment. And you'll see here, this is iRecord data, and for the lockdown period of 2020, sort of the first one, compared to the same period in 2019, they received actually a 97% increase in butterflies and moths. And so this reflects sort of garden species, and similarly with birds, they were more garden species, which is what you'd expect. And certainly, I know from my experience, I sort of concentrated more on looking for bees and butterflies and things, because that's what I could see. So so this is just to show that that's a sort of fairly consistent pattern. So that's sort of taking you through a little bit about the pattern of the data and the records that we're receiving. I then wanted to touch on briefly sort of the importance of monitoring. Now, obviously, most of you, I think, are recorders and are already doing it, but I just want to sort of emphasize why do we do it? Well, monitoring is hugely important. It's used in lots of research. It helps us track distributions, threats, population trends, and sort of mapping spread of invasives as well. And it also tells us a bit about the state of our environment. So here is the 2019 State of Nature report, and I've just picked out some kind of key figures here, which sadly, we are becoming all too familiar with. But the real one I wanted to point out was this one, that this report, as are many others, it's based on records from 70,000 volunteers submitting records to national recording schemes and LERCs like ours. So that's phenomenal, and that's, you know, these things couldn't happen without all of you. I also just wanted to say that you know, monitoring is also important, and from our point of view is key from the point of view of sort of monitoring impacts of development, thinking about nature recovery networks, monitoring natural capital, all that sort of thing. So it's from a policy side of things as well. Monitoring is key, and we want to make sure that all the decisions regarding development and conservation, you know, these are driven by data and by robust data. So that's where our records come in. While we're on this sort of topic of monitoring, I just wanted to talk briefly about the this concept of shifting baseline syndrome, which is where we're sort of accepting environmental degradation as the norm because we're viewing it from our own perspective of what we remember. So, for example, older generations, you know, that used to see water voles everywhere and lapwings everywhere, you know, they can really sort of feel the scale of loss because they remember it, whereas future generations won't necessarily perceive it as such a great loss. So it's really important that we think about, you know, what baselines we're using, and that again is where historic data is really important. As an example, a recent report into water voles, you know, found that we seem to be doing all right in kind of our initial target of restoring water voles to a certain percentage of kind of the original population. But actually, as more data came through, it became apparent that that original estimate was a huge underestimate. So again, it's where you draw that baseline and what you're comparing to. So next, I wanted to talk about, so you know why you're recording. You've picked your species group to record. Where best to actually focus your efforts. You can't monitor everything everywhere, but where obviously all records are important, but where could you particularly, you know, where do you get the most bang for your buck? Where could you make the most impact with your monitoring? So this is, I'm sure you'll have seen this, but this is a tool from UK CEH, the Centre for Ecology and Hydrology. This is the Decide tool, and it basically shows you the sort of priorities for recording. So the yellow areas here, these are high priority areas based on what modelers need to improve their analysis. So basically you're filling in the gaps by recording in those yellow areas. And the pins there sort of represent, they show you accessible sites, and you can click on them to find out sort of a bit more about the site and the habitat and that sort of thing. So they're really keen, this is for butterflies and moths, and they're really keen for kind of any feedback. So do have a look at that tool and provide them with any feedback that you have. Similarly, they've also developed this targeting revisits tool, which is all about improving sort of records to enable analysis of trends. So for that, you need sort of multiple years of records. So the idea here is that you turn a record from pink, which is only, or a square rather, from pink, which has only been visited once, to green, so that it's been visited several times, and that can then be used in trend modelling. And they've done this for grasshoppers, craneflies, ground beetles, and soldier flies. Finally, I just wanted to whiz through some tools that are out there to help you with ID and with your recording. So there are some obviously great field guides, great online tools such as Flickr pages. Stephen Falk's Flickr photos are fantastic for invertebrates. But there's also apps. So these are sort of the main three that I use. So there's Seek, which is from iNaturalist, What's That Bumblebee from Bumblebee Conservation Trust, and I Record Butterflies. So they'll give you, most of them just give you sort of photos. The Bumblebee one actually allows you to, you can see a bumblebee in sort of augmented reality. So you can have it kind of flying around your living room, which is quite fun. And then the Seek one, that enables you to actually take a photo, and then you can click identify, and it'll come up with what it thinks it is, and then it'll tell you some information about where it's found, sort of near where you saw it, its taxonomy, and also when you are likely to see it. And then finally, there's the app, What's Flying Tonight. Again, that's from CEH. I feel like I'm plugging them an awful lot, but that's a great tool for, you know, if you're into moth recording. It sort of shows you what you're likely to see that night or catch that night, based on the season, the weather, that sort of thing. So that's really helpful in kind of narrowing down your options as to what you might find. So that's sort of a quick kind of rundown of our data and the tools that are out there to help you. We'll talk about this more in our discussion session later. But I wanted to sort of, in that discussion, we'll be sort of carrying on the theme, and we'll be running these interactive polls. So to join those, if you could, obviously you can do this later in the discussion session, but you'll need to go to slido.com and enter this number, or if you're feeling very snazzy, you can open it, scan the QR code on your phone, and then you can answer the polls there. At the moment, there's one going just to sort of as a bit of an icebreaker, and we'll revisit it obviously in the discussion. But yes, hopefully if I put this here, it shouldn't come as a complete surprise. And there's also a link which we can put in the chat as well. So do have a look at those. But for now, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Henrietta. That's a good overview of where we're at. We've had a question from Paul Adkins come through on the chat to say that he's conducting field and waterway surveys for the Bat Conservation Trust and is sending his data to the National Bat Monitoring Programme. Should he be uploading that to us at TVERC as well, or is that going to cause a duplication?
That's sorry, excuse me. I would imagine, so I don't think we have, Ellen's the best person to ask on this one about data sharing, whether we have with National Bat Monitoring. But I don't, in terms of duplication, we normally check to make sure that any ID keys, you know, we make sure that we don't duplicate. But if Ellen is there, she might be able to, if she knows off the top of her head about the NBMP.
Ellen's internet has died, so she's not in the chat at the moment.
Okay, fine.
Thank you.
Hopefully we can get Ellen.
It's just an unfair question to ask in a way at a conference.
Yeah.
It just crossed my mind. Thank you. I'm happy to discuss it later afterwards by email or something if you could.
Yeah, that's great. We can pick that up with you afterwards.
If I get a response from Ellen, I will pop it in the chat, because I have messaged her to check if we do get records from the monitoring program. But yeah, in terms of duplication, we have a sort of a system, so we go through and we check records and what we receive, and it's all very well logged, so we do our best to avoid duplication in records that we hold.
Right, thanks. So one other piece of information then, and then I'll stop disrupting the conference. I believe the NBMB data gets uploaded further to the National Biodiversity Network Atlas, so that's the repository where it ends up. So if your data is going to the same place, then I don't see the need, but if it's not, then I'm quite happy to upload the data to your site as well. So
okay, thank you, Paul. That's very good to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Cole, you've got your hand up at the moment.
Just a quick one. Data on iRecord, and I think a lot of people asked this question at previous conferences, but do you automatically access that? Or if, for example, I upload data on iRecord, would you appreciate it separately, or would that just cause chances of duplication?
So we do annually, we download the records from iRecord, and again we look at the keys to make sure we're not duplicating. Having said that, we download all the verified records, which obviously can take quite a while. So if you are able to, if you're confident of the identification, if you are able to send those to us directly, which you can download yourself from your own iRecord page, and if you're able to send those to us, that's brilliant, because that means we get them a bit quicker. But eventually we will get them from iRecord as well. So it's really up to you, your preference.
Okay, so the iRecorder doesn't need to give TVERC permission to have the records or anything. You can get them straight off.
No, we can get them. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, fine. Thank you.